Good morning, Dan and Amy. So the CBO weighed in with their scoring of Obamacare replacement, the GOP's Obamacare replacement yesterday. And the top line, there's a couple of top lines. The top line for the left is going to be the CBO's suggestion that as many as 14 million people by the end of next year and 24 million people by the end of 2026 will not be covered. That's what the Democrats have been repeating incessantly the last 24 hours. Get used to it because you're going to get another 18 months of it at least. And the flip side, and this is the response from Paul Ryan's office in part, because the response from the White House and Paul Ryan was slightly different. The White House just kind of rejected the number out of hand. Paul Ryan said, yeah, it's the CBO says that we're going to see $1.2 trillion in reduced spending and $882 billion in tax relief. And so the net is $337 billion in deficit reduction. Exactly. Fiscal conservatism. That's right. Tom Price, on the other hand, said essentially, this is a poorly analyzed, statically analyzed at the end of the day because of the opportunities that are embedded in the replacement. He believes more people will be covered under the GOP plan.
Secretary, without that mandate to buy coverage, would you not concede that millions of people will not have insurance under this plan?
No, I wouldn't concede that at all.
You would not say millions of people are going to lose
No, because the fact of the matter is they're going to be able to buy a coverage policy that they want for themselves and for their family. They're going to have the kind of choices that they want. You think about the numbers that the top line, just the top line on CBO report today, it basically says that we'll be right back at pre-Obamacare status with about 40 million people uninsured in this country. We believe that the plan that we're putting in place is going to insure more individuals than currently are insured. So we think that CBO simply has it wrong.
Well, what does Grover Norquist think? Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform, joins us now with his scoring of the scoring. Grover, thanks for being with us again. Appreciate it.
Delighted to be with you. This is a fascinating example. CBO, Congressional Budget Office, is a government monopoly, okay? It's a bunch of people who work for the government. They have a monopoly, and they get to score how much taxes and spending there are in a particular piece of legislation. There were two interesting things that they did. One's meaningful, the other isn't. The meaningful one you mentioned. This bill scores that in the next 10 years, it reduces spending $1.2 trillion in undoing much of the damage of Obamacare. Not all, but much. Then it cuts $900 billion in taxes. So it reduces deficit spending by $300 billion in the next decade. And then when you read the CBO report, it says, and for the next 40 years, there aren't deficits from this either, okay? And they talk about there aren't $5 billion worth of deficits. That's the legal thing that they wrote. When the CBO scores and says that this bill does not, in years 11 to 50, increase the deficit, and it doesn't, okay, that's their score, then it can be passed through reconciliation. Okay, this may sound boring. This is key. This is why the Republicans, Trump, and Ryan and the American people who want health insurance won a huge, huge win with the CBO score. They said it reduces the deficit, doesn't increase it. What does that mean? It means with 51 votes in the Senate and 218 votes in the House, the bill, as written, can be enacted. Moreover, by saying there's $300 billion in deficit reduction, there's a lot of leeway now. There's some, conservative Republicans who go, gee, the bill isn't perfect yesterday. It doesn't solve all the world's problems. That's true. It doesn't solve all the world's problems. Within reconciliation, you can only make certain changes. But we could speed up tax cuts because you have $300 billion to play with. You could you could expand health savings accounts and flexible savings accounts even more. You get $300 billion in a decade to play with to answer some of the concerns the Freedom Caucus and others have to make it a stronger bill. Now, that is what changed the world. Had that number been this bill is in deficit, that would have been a disaster. But we got exactly what we wanted. It was extremely helpful. So
well, here,
we're looking at, yeah, go ahead.
no, so if it isn't mandatory to sign up for the American health care bill, where's the revenue going to come from? Because there's a lot of people out there who are paying an exorbitant amount of health insurance every month, $500 to $600, and they're healthy, and their deductibles are so high, so they're thinking of opting out. So where are they going to get the money?
Okay. Then there's the second part. So the first one is we can now do this under budget reconciliation, which means it can and will pass. Second, they say it does not everyone gets coverage. Well, you got to read the fine print. The CBO's definition of coverage, of having insurance, is Obama's definition. You have to insure for abortions and for all these other things that you may not be interested in, that you may not want to pay for. But their view is if you don't have a Cadillac, you don't have a car. If you don't have the insurance that the lobbyists wrote in Obamacare, you have to, there are 10 different things that they insist that you pay for in insurance, or they deem you uninsured. That's why more than 6 million Americans who were told they could keep their insurance lost their insurance. And what did you remember what they used to say? Oh, that insurance wasn't any good. It's just what you wanted. It isn't the list of things that Washington thought were terribly important. I'm looking at a list of 10 things that have to be in the essential health benefits, many of which make no sense if you're 20 years old, many of which makes no sense if you're 65 years old. Some don't make any sense for women, some don't make any sense for men, and some don't make any sense for people who don't drink. And so there's a whole series of things that the lobbies that helped write Obamacare insisted be in your insurance so you could pay them or the government could pay them, whether you wanted them or not. So it is technically true if you take the CBO's definite, it's not insurance unless we say it's insurance. And they do, to give them credit, stick in their 22-page report. What we're talking about is, do you buy the insurance that Obamacare calls insurance rather than something else? What Ryan said in that snippet is, people are going to be able to buy insurance that they want.
Well, and
the government wants them to have.
And here's the thing: CBO also conceded that the 14 million who would be uncovered by the end of next year, most of those individuals would be uncovered by choice, number one. Number two, with respect to kind of the static analysis of the CBO, with where you roll back the Medicaid expansion, you still have the tax credit opportunity. So for people that would see one form of coverage go by the boards because Medicaid expansion is rolled back, they still have a tax credit opportunity to purchase health insurance in the private marketplace if they want.
Yes, and they would tell you, CBO, that that's not real insurance according to their lights, okay? If you set up rules as to what the answers are, you get what they said. But this was a huge, huge win for conservatives, for people who want to reform Obamacare, get rid of Obamacare, and put in something else, because it means the legislation that Paul Ryan and President Trump have put together will now move forward. And as I said, they have $300 billion in additional tax cuts over a decade that they can put in to make this more attractive to people who have a question here or there about how to do something with this. But letting people have their own choices on what kind of insurance they want, that's what America's about. This is not one size. For Obama and the Democrats, there's one size. Everyone has to fit into it. It's the Procrustean bed, and if you're too short, they stretch you, and if you're too long, they cut your feet off, and then they pronounce you happy because the system is happy. They keep talking about trying to save Obamacare. How about trying to save the American people who are trying to buy insurance at a reasonable price? They always look at the structure, never at the people. So this is, plus, when CBO makes some of these projections, you've probably seen these, but when CBO scored Obamacare, they said that today, or 2016, this last year, 22 million people would have been in the Obamacare exchanges. It was half that, okay? They said, that expanding Medicaid, that'll cost $4,200 for everybody who enrolls. Well, actually, it was $6,400. They weren't close, but it doesn't matter. We don't need their guesstimate about what people will do. And by the way, when you read their stuff, they're making estimates. This is not economics, okay? This is not science. They're saying, we think state legislatures might do X. And then they give you a number. I'm sorry. I don't need to pay some bureaucrat in the CBO a bunch of money to guess what the 50 state legislatures will pass. You think they're doing some economic analysis, like if you cut taxes 10%, more people will work, or this, that, or the other thing will happen. This is a political statement, and all we needed it to do was give us the green light to abolish much of Obamacare inside reconciliation, which means it can't be filibustered. The Democrats can scream all they want, but they just lost a big one because now Trump is sitting down with the Republicans who have questions and answering those and saying, I only need 50 votes in the Senate plus the vice president and 218 in the House, and we don't need any Democrats. Of course, Democrat votes come with higher taxes and more spending.
He is Grover Norquist. The reason he's one of the best is because he can work in Procrustean bed into a discussion about health care policy. He is also the president of Americans for Tax Reform. Grover, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, we're going to win.
All right, very
Okay.
good. He's pumped. Thanks,
And
Grover.
He joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.